Welcome to the Billy Ho Forecast Show. Please subscribe and like the video. Remember, the more you share, the bigger we grow. Now, let's go! Hello, Billy Ho here, coming to you with the Tuesday show for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, Detroit Rock City, Detroit Golf Club. And I am joined by my man, David, the DFS chef. We're going to break down some DraftKings pricing and throw you out some sleepers and maybe some guys we're interested in playing. Remember, Billy Ho needs your support, so subscribe to the channel, give me a like, and we're going to get it kicked off here. How you doing today, David?
I'm doing good, coming off a good week. No complaints. For those that watched last week's show, I think we were on point. We mentioned guys to fade that were going to be highly owned and they missed the cut. And then we gave out some sleepers that did surprisingly well.
Yeah, it did. It just didn't come together for me very well, but it was just a couple of minor mistakes, but it's one of those weeks. But we're moving on to the new week, and this is the I believe this and Wyndham are the last two events coming up before the FedEx playoffs. So these guys are geared up to try to crack that 125. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, Dave, we are going to kick it off here. And since, DraftKings dicked around with the pricing again, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the Fantasy Golf World Championships or what, but I said they damn well should put Patrick Cantlay at 11,200. Tony should have been 11,000. Then they could have just put whoever else they could have put Homa at 10-1 and Cam Davis at 99. They could have moved everybody up. They skipped an entire range from 93 to 9,700. But we're going to go 9K and up. Kick it to you. So get us started with a couple of plays and maybe a fade or two, because this is where your ownership's going to land.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we saw last week that the nut builds, I think, had the two 10K guys with Finau and Sungjae, and I'm seeing some pods and some articles talking about doing that same thing this week and going with two 10K guys, and you easily don't have to you can still stay under avoiding that 6K range even with two 10K guys this week. So originally when I did my model originally yesterday, I had certain key stats. And then when I looked at it and then looked at some, other articles, I originally had strokes gained approach. And then when I looked at it and I saw the importance, and it's always important, but tee to green is a huge factor, and especially in the top guys at this tournament. So I changed approach to tee to green, which obviously tee to green covers all that except when you're on the green itself. So originally when I did it, Finau and Hubbard were ranking out tied for first in my model. And then when I changed it to tee to green, Patrick Cantlay is now number one in my model. And, even though he has no course history here, I mean, you look at what he does, the only thing he hasn't done this year is win. So I definitely don't mind going all the way up top and starting your cash builds with Cantlay. I think it's going to obviously come down to ownership percentages when we're up here. And do you want to try and fade some chalk up top? I prefer trying to fade the chalk on the bottom and finding some of those, gems in the lower range that are less owned. So I honestly don't mind going back to Finau again this week. I mean, he did play here in 2020. It wasn't great, but, I think since 2020, he's kind of elevated his game. He only has 3 wins on tour, but 2 of those are within like the last, calendar year now. So
yeah,
I think he's starting to, find and know what it takes to win on tour. Zalatoris is probably going to be my fade up here. We're talking, I mean, this is a putting contest, and that's, the weakest part of Zalatoris's game is putting. So, he did play here last year, and I think he was like dead last for the guys that made the cut last year here. So I definitely can fade Zalatoris up top. Cameron Young's probably going to be extremely, popular. Homa is sandwich priced, and I'm wondering what's Homa's ownership is going to be. He's ranking out second in my model. He's played here, 2 of the 3 years, and he's made the cut both times. Not the greatest of finishes. He is coming off that miscut at the Open Championship, but he missed it by a stroke. So
yeah,
I definitely don't mind Homa, especially if he's going to be sandwiched in between Young and Cam Davis, which Cam Davis, the defending champion, he's elevated his game, especially over the last, 3 tournaments. So I think Cam Davis will be real popular. So up here, it's just going to be coming down to, kind of ownership for me. But I most likely am going to have 2 guys that are definitely 9K plus in my lineups this week.
All right, that sounds good. Any interest in the lower tier guys down there like Scott, Bradley, or Kisner?
Scott's starting to get a lot of chatter. He doesn't play a full season anymore. He's getting up there. I'm surprised we haven't seen him get lured over to Live.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially with Live's, calendar, I think they play 12 tournaments. At least that's what they have this year. Who knows if they increase the tournaments next year? But I would think Scott would love that, considering he only plays like half the time, or not even half the time on tour anyway. But he is popping. He's long, and I think distance will matter here. I mean, we've seen that the last 2 winners with Davis and Bryson. They use that bomb and gouge technique, but you don't necessarily have to be long to win here. It definitely comes down to your short wedges and your putter at this tournament. So, and Adam Scott is a good putter, so I don't mind Scott. Keegan has done well here. I'm on the fence right now with Keegan. I'm probably leaning toward fading him, and then Kisner's probably going to be pretty heavily owned. And that's because of his, tournament history here, especially the last 2 seasons with 2 top 10s. I don't know where I'm at with Kisner. I'm going to definitely look at his ownership. I don't mind him in cash, but for GPP, I probably will fade him in GPPs.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I'm not sure where I land on these guys either. And they're kind of like the unknown, they're almost in a tier of their own after you get past the top 6 or 7 guys. And it does start with Cantlay for me as well. He just destroys it tee to green. Like you said, as soon as you went to tee to green, he shot right up to the top of the model. And he could have a big week this week. He's a guy that's not afraid of a birdie fest. He's 6th in the FedEx standings. Just this is a little narrative street, and he can vault to 2nd with a win here. So he can move. He can take Wyndham off and maybe cruise into the FedEx playoffs in 2nd and work his way up, because he won it last year. I mean, I'm sure he'd pretty much love to go back to back. So, and Finau, like I said in the Discord, I think he can back it up this week with another strong performance. His putting from 5 to 10 feet. This is just a short, 6-week model, so it's going to be 3 or 4 events. But the putting from 5 to 10 feet, pretty good for Tony. He started off the tournament 3-putting the very first green, and then the man turned it around from there. So he's doing all right. But it's weird you said that about Zalatoris, because I run a 3-event model and he pops out putting for 5 to 10 feet, 6th. But we all know and who have watched him play golf, he gets a little bit yippy inside of 10 feet when he's about 5 or 6 feet for that birdie. He gets a little bit nervous. Cam Young is another guy that he just on paper looks like he would just destroy this course. Like he don't even have to take driver out of the bag, and he's hitting wedges. But lately his wedge game, I was actually going to change this model to bump it up to that maybe the last 24 rounds, get a little bit bigger sample size here so we can see. And Willie Z, I mean, he's still birdie or better. I mean, he's popping in the model, but I kind of agree with you, Dave. It's just hard to say. I mean, do I just pay the extra 300 to get Cantlay? Max Homa, I love this week. I think he's going to come in here between the bent POA mixture of the greens. I feel, and he's putting better than he has in most of the time we've seen him. Fourth in DK points over the last 4 events, birdies for days. He's got the wedge game rolling. The driver is a little suspect, but off the tee game is not penal here. So Cam Davis was outstanding last week. I thought plays well in the wind. Remember, we might have a little bit of windy PM this week, Thursday, Friday. And Scott and Keegan Kisner we're still on the bubble with. I don't want to get down into 8. Well, I guess I will go ahead and kick the 8Ks off. Denny, the best putter in the field. If you believe in him being able to whack it out there and put it on the green and putt, he's your man, because I don't think he's going to be very popular. Well, he's decently popular. So people have been monitoring his good play. Maverick McNeely was another one that I was interested in. He played pretty well last week. He kind of fell off over the weekend, but it may depend on the tee draw. I'm going to use that tee draw as long as it keeps holding where the PM Thursday guys are getting 12 to 15 mile an hour sustained winds and 20 plus gusts. I am going to use that as a tiebreaker. So if I've seen a lot of the guys that I like in the AM wave, I'm going to default to that. Riley, I might run back. He let everybody down last week, and he was one that I figured if he does it again, he does it again. 9K for a guy who's had just limited starts on the PGA Tour, and at 35 to 40% ownership was just insane to me. I like Tringali to bounce back this week. I think he's going to have some positive regression with the putter. He's got 3 straight cuts made here and all pretty solid finishes. His last 2 years were even better. He look at him here. Well, he had a 14th last year, so he's got bookend good finishes, but still 30th, So he's been playing some of the best golf of his career. This is my first, I guess technically sleeper, but I don't know. I mean, he doesn't look like he's getting a lot of ownership right now, 5.2%. Adam Hadwin. And this is a guy I didn't really notice until about an hour ago, who was all right last week. I was on him somewhat because he was in the higher 9K range. And I really like him on POA greens and bent greens. And this has got more POA in it. So, and his off the tee game is looking really solid. He's looking like he's going to be under 10% ownership. And he's playing more like the 4th place that he got here in 2020 than he is in last year's missed cut. So I feel pretty good about him. And I almost don't even want to bring up the next 3 guys. Webb, who's on my shit list. Henley, who we haven't seen a whole lot of lately, but he's been struggling. And I don't have much interest in either one of those. I can never get Gary Woodland right. He's either a top 10 or he misses the cut. And it might not be worth the risk. Maybe he's 33rd in the model, so he's not terrible. He just does about average on everything. Mark Hubbard is back in the field this week. I don't know. He's still looking like he's getting ownership. He's 23rd in this model for the last 4 events, but the wedges, 14, 6, and 1. When they all 3 hit the top 15 like this, I kind of lump this into a bucket of wedges, because I hate it when you see a guy that's first from 125 to 150, and then from 100 to 125, he's 150th. That doesn't make any sense to me. But when I see similar numbers across the board like that, that's when my eyes light up. Not good on the distance, not good but like I said, off the tee game is pretty much down compared to most other courses. It's going to be dry. Just keep an eye out, because there might be a storm. Yesterday there was, today there wasn't. It's summer, so pop-up storms are there. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to David, and he can go through his 8K guys and lead us right on into 7.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same guys in this 8K range. Although I know from the couple pods I've watched, this could be what wins you a GPP this week, because it seems like a lot of guys are talking about just fading this 8K range because they want to go with 10K plus guys in a lot of their lineups. So, McNeely grading out third in my model. I do like Mav. Made the cut here both times he's played. Last week, I had a lot of Maverick McNeely in my lineups. I was very overweight on McNeely. He let me down a little bit. I thought he would do better, but I don't mind going back to the well with McNeely. Sahith and Davis Riley. Davis Riley was one of the guys we mentioned last week that, his ownership was crazy and it would probably be better just to fade him. And, that obviously panned out last week if you faded him. Tringale cost me last week. I thought Tringale would have done a lot better last week, but this course sets up even better for him. Obviously, we see that from his course history here. So he's like the one out of those three guys that missed the cut last week that I don't mind going back to. Because he is a good putter. And like we're saying, we're getting into a putting contest. Obviously, when we talk strokes gained numbers and strokes gained metrics, putting is the most volatile. You can have a guy that ranks almost near the bottom in putting that finds a hot putter one week and just runs away with it, So it's going to be hard to say, but I did see a stat that, you do want to try and find guys that have been gaining strokes with their putter, at least the last several tournaments, and that should help you kind of narrow it down. And again, they might necessarily be bad putters, but over the last couple tournaments are actually gaining with the putter. So you definitely want to watch that. I'm with you with Webb, Henley, and Woodland. I'm a huge Webb fan. I always have been, but at least for this week, I think I'm going to be late rather than early on Webb. If he does well this week, great. But if he does well this week, that's only going to further increase his ownership for next week at the Wyndham, because we all know the Wyndham is his jam. So I almost want to see him do bad this week, and hopefully that'll lower his ownership for next week. Like I mentioned when we started, originally when I had my key stats graded out, Hubbard was tied first in my model with Finau. Hubbard always grades out well whenever we look at stats. He's still grading out sixth in my model this week. It's difficult for me on Hubbard, because there are so many guys in the 7K range that I think have better win equity than Mark Hubbard. So I don't know where I'm at with Hubbard. I probably will have a few shares of him, especially if he's going to be projected lower. But like you said, I think you just mentioned he's getting some steam. So I don't know where I'm at with Mark Hubbard right now. And that'll lead me right into this 7K range, because like I said, there are so many guys with better win equity than Hubbard. Chris Kirk being one of them, But I think Chris Kirk is going to be very highly owned. The last couple tournaments that we saw him at, not great, but when we look at those tournaments, we're talking the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. Yeah. He did make the cut. He made the cut at both. So I mean, now he's coming back to a much easier course. You see his course history here. Grades out really well, 13th in my model. And then right below him, Scott Stallings, the guy that, not great at this course, but he has made the cut all 3 years that it's played here. And then when we talk some of the comp courses, Travelers and John Deere being one of them, what did Scott Stallings do at both of those? He had an 8th at Travelers and a 4th at the John Deere. So it definitely kind of oozes that Stallings should be very popular this week. Then we get into our man, Ju Young Kim or Tom Kim. He just continues to make cuts, at 7,600. He's probably going to be very popular. I don't mind him in cash, but if he's going to gain a bunch of ownership, then I will gladly pivot to the man right below him in Troy Merritt. But based on Troy Merritt's history here, he's probably going to be very popular. But we know Troy Merritt can score low. And we witnessed that based on his finishes here. He can go low. And like you brought up the wind, last year there was wind. The wind gusts last year are going to be very similar to what we see this year. However, based on the early forecast, it should be calmer this year than it was last year, especially on the weekend play. So
Yeah.
I definitely expect the scores are going to be in the 20s for the winner. And I mean,
Oh yeah.
Cam Davis won last year still at 18, and that was with just, with like sustained 25-mile-an-hour gusts last year.
Mhm.
So, I definitely can see that. Taylor Pendrith, I think, is going to be popular. Taylor Pendrith is long, but he can also putt. So he should be popular. I do think, like I mentioned, I think distance is a bonus here, but you don't have to be long. So Johnny Vegas intrigues me. And then I'm sure Goddard's going to be popular because we know Goddard can just bomb it out there, just like Cameron Young.
Mhm.
But Goddard is also a fairly good putter. And again, going back to Travelers, John Deere, made the cut at Travelers. T4 at the Deere with Stallings made the cut last week. So I definitely see Goddard being popular. Uh, I don't know where his projected ownership is, but Harris English really intrigues me this week. If we go to the second tab on that bets and player pool tab, if we look, Harris English, when we go over, best bent POA putters since 2021, minimum of 10 rounds. I mean, he only has 12 rounds on it because obviously he's coming back from injury, but he is first over since 2021 in strokes gained putting on bent POA that I looked at since 2021, and he is up there a couple times. So I think English could be a sleeper, but I don't know what his projected ownership is. He might not be a sleeper if he's
Oh,
going to be.
he's absolutely not going to be owned. I can't possibly imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
sub 5%.
okay. But then we get into probably popular plays, and I'm surprised to see him drop in salary this week from his 8K price last week. Nick Hardy. Nick Hardy's another guy that can go low. His birdie or better percentage is pretty high. And again, looking back at the Travelers and the John Deere, was 8th at the Travelers, 30th at the Deere. He did make the cut last week, but he was a bit of a disappointment. He kind of just bubbled his way in. And then Wyndham Clark, long off the tee, good putter. So I think Wyndham Clark's going to be real popular. Um, where I'm at with Luke List. Luke List is one of those guys that's always on my list.
Yeah.
I have played him a little bit this year, but I think he's back on my list of guys that if he beats me, he beats me, because I'd rather go to Patrick Rogers than Luke List this week. At least Patrick Rogers is long off the tee, not as long as Luke List, but the one thing Patrick Rogers is better at is putting. So I
Yes.
don't mind. I don't mind Rogers, but Grayson Sigg is going to be popular, especially after his finish last week. And I'm sure that Callum Tarrant is going to be gaining some steam, especially with what he's
Oh
been
yeah.
doing lately. So, those are definitely guys that I'm looking at in that 7K range. And then Gligic continues to outperform recently. So I don't know where Gligic is going to be. His course history here is not great, but with what he's been doing lately, I definitely don't mind going back to Gligic.
Yeah, he's been scoring quite well. Actually, I did have him starred, so he's definitely somebody I'll look into. But I could see why you game theory wise you'd pivot to the 8Ks, because this 7K range is absolutely loaded. I
Yeah.
mean, you can build your entire 6 player. Just don't even care about salary. Just pick your favorite 6 guys from this range and play a lineup in it and just see what it does. You might, get a 6 of 6 and you might have some upside. The one guy I wanted to mention, we didn't mention, is Siwoo. He is so risky. He did have the 15th at the Open, and which was great. But the course history here is not all that great either. He would be just a low owned guy that you would, if you wanted to play in a large field GPP. He's a guy that can get hot with the irons. He is a good wedge player, not so much on the distance, but you can see 17th in good drives over the last 3 events. So once, if he's driving the ball okay and hitting his approaches all right, he can sometimes give you some big upside. But I'm right there with you. Kirk and Stallings both are on my radar. They're both in my pool. both ball striking well. I think Kirk has it dialed in pretty damn good. The one thing I mentioned in my preview video is these greens are small, 5,100 square feet, and they are sloping. They have a lot of slope to them, and you want to keep the ball below the hole at all costs. If you, I got a quote from Nate Lashley when the first year they had the tournament, when he absolutely came in here Monday, qualified, and destroyed this place 25 under par. He said, I just kept putting the ball below the hole. And every time I got it below the hole, the putts were so easy. And I was just rolling them in one after another. And so he said, if you get past the hole and you're putting downhill or whatever, it makes it significantly more difficult. So if you've got a guy that's good in proximity in these ranges like Hubbard and whatnot, they can also, I put in here 5 to 10 feet putting over, however many rounds. And so that's kind of a little tiebreaker too. So with Jan Kirk and Stallings, I think I go back to Champ. Nobody's playing him again. He's like 3%, 4%, 5%. I played him last week. He's one of 3 guys I noticed that made the cut on the number and took advantage of it. So he's another sleeper. Huge benefit making that cut on the number. He found something over the weekend with the irons. The putter came back, and he scored quite well. I don't know I can't remember exactly what he shot, but he was like 8 or 9 under for the weekend or whatever. So, and he finished with a solid, top 20 finish. And I think if he goes back out there and does it again, he's going to be even better. And what he did the same MO last year. He missed a whole bunch of cuts, and then he came into the week before the 3M and had a top like 12 or 15 and then won the next week. So I don't know if this is definite narrative street, but he did well last week, and he may parlay that again into another huge finish this week. So I'll look for him. I don't know if I'll go back, give Brendan Steele another chance, because I thought, well, he lost 6 strokes putting. He can't do that again. Wrong. Did it again. So he lost 6 strokes putting again. I might let him beat me. I don't feel like his upside is that phenomenal. I mean, if he maybe top 15 finish, he does score when he putts, but it's just it's a real tough call in a birdie fest like this. I will give Pendrith a little bit more of a look. The other guy, actually, I've been kind of poo-pooing on the last couple of weeks, but Gotterup, he showed me a lot last week because he had a terrible first round, and he could have just mailed it in like he did at the Barbasol, but he pulled his big boy pants up and tied his belt and tied his shoelaces and wiped his nose off and got out there and got after it. And I believe eagled and 2 birdied, went 4 under on his last 5 holes to get in on the number. And he parlayed that into a nice weekend. So I feel like he's a guy that, he can bomb it out there and not so much concerned with the driving accuracy. But see, this is another guy, like I said, buckets. So from 75 to 100, he's really good. But then he drops off from 1 to 125. But then what is he, terrible from 125 to 150? It's, it's just, I had it on here as a cumulative thing. Like I said earlier, looking for guys with all 3 categories. Vegas intrigues me some, but sleeper number 2 is Ryan Palmer. And Ryan Palmer played well last week. I think he's gearing up for a FedEx Cup run. He made the cut 31st, made the cut at Genesis Scottish Open. But for a guy who is notorious for finding the water, he made the cut at the 3M Open and gained 2.7 strokes off the tee. So that's amazing to me. I think he's got a shot to be pretty good coming in to the Rocket. And I want to say, okay, so he has no course history. But with the way he played last week, and he was really frustrated with the putting. So he was missing a lot of birdie putts. He had a lot of opportunities, and this was just the eyeball test. So I'm going to be looking at him because I saw like 1 or 2%. And I thought, well, damn, I mean, if that's how it's going to be, then I'm on it. So I'll be looking at him. And of course, Hardy, Clark, and Svensson, I think, are all guys that are going to be on my radar. But just finishing up here in the 6Ks, I guess it has to start with Chesson Hadley. The guy's playing lights out golf. And he looked really focused. And this was another eyeball test because he got a lot of airplay on ESPN. And he chipped one in he was on the green, but he had to chip it over a mound and in the rough. And then it rolled out of the rough and rolled in for like this miracle birdie. And, he does that, like that finger pop thing where he, because he's got like 9-inch long fingers and he does this big loud pop with his fingers when he makes birdies. Well, he did the fist pump and he fist pumped his caddy and he just walked on. He didn't do the finger pop, no shenanigans or nothing like that. He just looked really, really focused. Like I'm getting my shit together. This is the time to make a run and I'm just going to stay focused on it and roll. So I like that about him. And right underneath that, Hayden Buckley is getting his game together. He's dialing it in. Ball striking has been phenomenal. He's a little bit better on POA greens, just on the small sample size. So maybe the extra mixture of POA will help his putting. And there's other guys. I might run back Nick Taylor. And of course, we'll talk. We might as well just mention, get it out of the way. Stone minimum is Sung Yul No. Me and Dave were talking about it before the broadcast, and he's just lights out with approach. You can see he's gaining over 9 strokes in his last 2 events. Around the green and putting is all in the green, but he is just awful off the tee. He just bleeds strokes off the tee, but he still makes cuts. He finds a way. Now this week, I think maybe if we get lucky, and I believe I played him, it was either RBC, it wasn't Mexico because I know he made the cut, and it was probably the Canadian Open. And when I first noticed, that he was improving, and he didn't even gain strokes on approach then. So if he can putt and still manage to keep the approaches, and there's only one hole with water in play, so we don't have much of that to worry about. The fairways are wide. The tree line, you can still get it through if you need to. So off the tee game, not going to be that big a deal. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Dave, and you just give us the rest of your 6Ks and we'll close her out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're on the same 6K plays. Thank you to my guru. Everyone knows my guru of DFS PGA is Rick Gaiman, Rick Rungood. And going on and checking what he was mentioning about Chesson Hadley. Chesson Hadley is numero uno in strokes gained over like the last 24 or 30 rounds, whatever it might be, versus his baseline numbers. He is first versus his baseline numbers. We see that. I mean, he's made 5 or 6 straight cuts. His history here is not great, but this is only the 4th year this tournament's played. So yeah. I'm not really focusing too much on course history at this tournament. I think that he can definitely get there. He's improved. I mean, if you look at 2019, he missed the cut by 6 strokes. And then 2020, he improved. He missed the cut, but he only missed it by 1. And then last year he improved and made the cut, even though it was a 52nd. But based on what he's doing right now, I think he's going to be very popular. He's actually one of Kenny Kim's cash game cornerstones this week.
Yeah.
I mentioned Hayden Buckley last week as a sleeper, and he didn't prove he was right there. I had a bet on Buckley, and I only bet him to top 40. I wasn't going to go crazy and have him as a top 20, and he cashed me on a top 40 bet. So I'll go right back to Buckley because I believe Buckley's riding like 5 or 6 straight cuts.
Yeah.
I didn't bet this guy, but I did play him in a few of my fantasy lineups. Lee Hodges. I do like Lee Hodges again this week. I don't know what his projected ownership is, but that could be a sleeper. Again, made the cut at Travelers, made the cut at the John Deere, finished 16th last week. So, I mean, he's definitely right there. And then, that we mentioned Sung Yul No last week. And now he's even cheaper. He was 6,300 last week, and now, like you said, he's bare minimum, stone cold minimum.
It just boggles my mind how DraftKings algorithm works.
Exactly.
I mean,
And
do they not take recent form into account at all?
he's made 5 straight cuts. So, I mean, if you want to go 2 10K plus guys and then put some you'll know in your lineup at 6K, and then maybe even go to like Chesson Hadley or Buckley, you could really get like 3 guys that are 9K plus in your lineups, and
Easily.
two of those guys being 10K plus. Another couple guys I'll mention real fast would be Kelly Craft. Kelly Craft again, cut made it to Travelers, cut made it to Deer, was 11th last week. Didn't even know where he came from, but he was right there with 11th. We know Peter Malnati. Peter Malnati can putt. That's what he's known for. He's a putter, but he can also lay in the birdies, and he was T11 with Kelly Craft last week. So, Malnati could be a sleeper, but his history here is not great. But his history wasn't great last week at the 3M, and he snuck in there. And last guy I'll mention real fast, I think was where was he? I had him, and
I'll tell you what, Dave, we're about out of time. So toss him out there in the Discord, and you can get in there with Billy Ho. Just hit me up on the DMs, and I'll give you the link. For David, the DFS chef, it's Billy Ho signing off. Peace.